Do you remember kids' Christmas programs? Mary and Joseph wearing their bathrobes for costumes and the wise men all decked out in mom's costume jewelry. Angels with their cardboard wings and, pipe cleaner halos. You remember all that? Little sheep with little woolen ears and shepherds, more bathrobes and sandals or barefoot and a stick they found out in the woods for a shepherd's staff, right? The whole Christmas story. Just like so many things in the way God works. It's an example of great paradox, isn't it? So we have the King of the universe, the very Son of God, who is born in a barn of all places, a barn. And then the shepherds, I think I've always taken them sort of for granted as perhaps the most natural, the least ironic part of the whole Christmas story. Somehow it makes sense that the angels would be out or would make a scene with the shepherds who are out there in the field, and who else is up at that time of night? And of course the shepherds are there because they're watching the sheep. So that seemed kind of normal. And there are lots of shepherds in the Bible, right? Abraham was a shepherd. Isaac and Jacob were shepherds. Moses was a shepherd. David was a shepherd who became a king. Jesus refers to himself as the great shepherd. And in fact, throughout the Old Testament, having flocks and herds was a sign of great wealth. And so I always had that sort of imagery in the background, as I imagine you did too, as you hear about the Christmas story and shepherds out in the fields. It just all makes sense. But a few years ago, I learned something new about the shepherds that adds a whole new element to the way I think about the Christmas story. The fact is, in the days of Jesus, shepherds were considered lowlifes. They were like, scum of the earth bad. They were considered thieves and cheats. So, Jesus was infamous for hanging out with the sinners and the tax collectors. Well, the shepherds would have belonged to that despised social strata known as the sinners. That's who they were. And then we have the Mishnah, which is Judaism's written record of the oral law of the Israelites. So the oral tradition, God gives his commandments and they pass it down from generation to generation. And then finally they got around to writing it down. So now, we have a record of that. And when you read the Mishnah, you see that it refers to shepherds often in very belittling terms. So one passage refers to them as incompetent. And another one says that no one should ever be obligated to rescue a shepherd who has fallen into a pit. Can you imagine that? These are God's people, the Israelites. And the teaching that they're passing down is, hey, shepherds are so bad. If you find one in a pit, don't worry about it. Just leave them there. Not worth it. So that's the shepherds. And of course, they were unclean, ceremonially unclean because of their work. They worked with animals every day, which meant they couldn't go into the temple for worship like the rest of the people did. At least they would have to go through a ceremonial process before they could do that. So all of these things makes it just all that more remarkable that the angels would appear to the shepherds of all people to bring great tidings of good news that a Savior has been born. We know that part really well, right? So if you think about the wise men with their gold and frankincense and myrrh, that's part of the story. And because it's Jesus we're talking about, we have managed to turn that manger scene into a thing of pastoral beauty, right? So the straw is clean and golden. There's never any manure in the picture ever anywhere, right? The animals look like they've come right out of the county fair. They've been washed and shampooed and brushed. They look perfect. And Mary's dress, it's always blue, right? And it's freshly ironed. It's just immaculate. That's the scene that we sort of memorialize as we remember Christmas and act it out and rehearse it from one year to the next. But we know, of course, that the truth of it is that Jesus was born in the humblest of circumstances. It wasn't that nice, pretty barn scene or manger scene that we picture. It was a stinky, old, nasty barn. And that's where the Son of God came down. That's where he first appeared on earth. And in the midst of that scene, the irony of all of that, who did the angels appear to? The shepherds. They gave the first announcement of the coming of the Savior of the world to the shepherds, the lowliest of the low, the riffraff who were out there in the fields. I wonder what that says about who we should esteem. God certainly looks at things differently than we often do. I was with a friend recently who's about 80 years old. I'm 54, by the way, so still a few years behind him. But we were talking about how hard it is these days to get up off the floor. He was telling me about how when he puts wood in the stove, it's hard to get up. He's got a bad shoulder on one side, bad knee, bad arm. It's a little harder than it used to be. And I've been feeling the same way this year as I get down and back up from watering the tree. And so my friend said, actually some 20 years ago, back when he was 60, I've never forgotten it, getting old is not for cowards. That's what he said. And it's true. Aging is sort of the great equalizer, isn't it? It's the great equalizer. No matter how much money you had or have, whether you belong to the wealthy class of the wise men or the poor class of the shepherds or anywhere in between, time treats us all the same, right? So rich or poor, well-educated, not educated, tight-knit family that, just seems to have everything together, or kind of a messed up family where people can't seem to get along, and we all fall somewhere on that spectrum, right? But time waits for no one. We all get older. Likewise, Jesus is the great equalizer. He came for all of us, everybody, from the wealthy wise men to the riffraff shepherds and everybody in between. You see, with Jesus, there are no social strata in his eyes. We're all the same, and we're of equal value and worth to him. So he came for all of us. He demonstrates considerable esteem for the least of these in our society. He came into our world. He entered into the things that we do and experience with all of the ups and downs that come with being human. It says that he came, actually, he said that he came to satisfy the poor in spirit. And he says he came to seek and to save the lost. He came to bind up the brokenhearted. He came to give us abundant life. And he came to be with us. And I know I've said before, that's my favorite Christmas name for Jesus, my favorite name for Jesus across the board. And the context for that name, God with us, Emmanuel, the context for that is that the angel appears to Joseph, and Joseph has just found out that his fiancée is pregnant, and he knows he's not the father. And he's like, that's it, we're done, it's over. And the angel says, wait a minute, Joseph, hold on. He said, go ahead and marry her. She didn't cheat on you. In fact, she is pregnant with the Son of God. And the angel tells Joseph, all of these things that are happening are to fulfill what the prophet said all those years ago. The virgin will bear a son, and you will call him Emmanuel, God with us. So, Merry Christmas to you. God is with you. That is great news, isn't it? He is with us. But it's a paradoxical gift. It makes no sense to the world that Jesus should have come in the way that he did. It makes no sense to the world that Jesus, or even to us perhaps, that he should be who he is. That his dying should give us life. But that's who he is. That's what he is. God with us. He's the gift that makes sense of life for you and for me. And I hope that you know him, not just as, the babe in the manger that we celebrate every Christmas, but as a friend, as your Savior, your Redeemer, your King, all year round. So we're about to turn a corner. Christmas is over, right? In a few days, we're going to be taking down the tree. We're going to put all the Christmas decorations away. We pack it all up until next year, and the new year is upon us. So instead of looking back to the past, now we're looking ahead to the new year. The babe in the manger is all grown up. And he has proven to be so much more than what the prophets foretold. He is Christ, our Redeemer, our King. And he didn't just come for us. He came for them. Those other folks, the ones who don't know him yet. Folks who are where we once were, not knowing him for who he really is. So, let's go share the good news. Let's shout it out with the angels to the whole world, from the upper echelons of society to the lowest echelons of society. Let's let people know that Jesus is here and he loves them immensely. I'm super excited to do the work that we're going to do together this year as we build the kingdom, as we join the King in building his kingdom here in Minong, Solon, across the North Woods, even to the ends of the world, right? And I wonder what kind of crazy things he may have in store for us to do. Things that will turn the logic of the world on its head. Have you thought about that? What does he want us to do this year? Maybe we'll be pulling shepherds out of pits. Maybe we'll be giving hope to children who are lacking hope right now. We're going to live the kingdom together, right? For the joy that it brings to the Father, for the good that it brings to others. So Merry Christmas to you. Happy New Year. God bless you.